I'd told her everything. The ranch, held in both our names, the investment properties, the stocks and bonds and retirement accounts built over 2 decades. Michael's company, which I'd helped launch with my inheritance, though his name alone was on the LLC paperwork. Rebecca had listened without judgment, taking notes in that precise way of hers. Here's what we're going to do. Quietly, carefully, before he knows we're doing anything at all. The documents had been filed on a Tuesday, 6 weeks before that envelope arrived. A claim of separate property interest based on my initial capital contribution. A notice of spousal rights to community property. An injunction preventing the sale or transfer of any jointly held assets without both parties' consent and proper disclosure. Rebecca had been thorough. She'd always been thorough. The thing is, she'd explained as I signed page after page in her downtown office, California is a community property state. Anything acquired during marriage belongs equally to both spouses. He can't just sell the ranch without your knowledge and consent. And even if he tries, we've now created a paper trail that shows you explicitly didn't consent. What if he's already trying? I asked. She gave me a look. Is he? I don't know. Maybe I have this feeling. Then we're doing this just in time. I walked out of her office that day feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Powerful. In control. I was finally playing chess instead of checkers. The morning after I received the notice, I called Rebecca from my car, parked at the far end of our property where Michael couldn't see me from the house. He did it. He sold the ranch. To her. For how much? $5. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought we'd been disconnected. Rebecca? That son of a bitch. Her voice was cold, clinical. Here's what's going to happen. Don't confront him. Don't tip your hand. Let him think he got away with it. Meanwhile, I'm filing an emergency motion to void the sale. We'll need copies of everything. The deed, the transfer documents, all of it. I have them. Good. Diane, this is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. No. Ugly, ugly. Public. Expensive. He's going to fight back, and he's going to fight dirty. I looked out at the land. My land. The hills rolling toward the horizon, dotted with oak trees and grazing horses. The place where I had buried my mother's ashes, where Sophie had taken her first steps, where I had imagined growing old. Let him fight. I'm not losing this. The mistress showed up 3 days later. I was in the garden, deadheading roses, when the BMW pulled up the drive. I knew it was her before she even got out. Michael had described his consultant enough times, always professionally, always in that tone that was trying too hard to sound disinterested. She was younger than I'd expected, prettier too, in that polished, expensive way that money can buy. Designer sunglasses, perfectly highlighted hair, the kind of woman who looks like she's never had a bad angle in her life. She walked toward the house like she owned it. He underestimated me. They all did. See, 3 months ago, I'd had lunch with Rebecca Chen, my friend from law school who'd gone on to specialize in family law. It was supposed to be a casual catch-up. Wine and salads and gossiping about whose kids got into which colleges. But Rebecca had looked at me across that table and asked, very quietly, Diane, are you happy? The question had startled me. Was I happy? I had everything, didn't I? The ranch, financial security, a daughter in medical school. What was happiness compared to that? Why do you ask? I'd said instead of answering. Because I've seen that look before, on a lot of women's faces, right before their entire lives implode. I'd laughed it off then, ordered another glass of wine, changed the subject. But that night, I'd lain awake, listening to Michael snore beside me, and I'd thought about the distance between us, the way he flinched when I touched him, the mysterious business trips that seemed to multiply, the smell of unfamiliar perfume that clung to his suits. I'd called Rebecca the next morning. I need to protect myself. I told her. Hypothetically. Hypothetically, she'd repeated. Tell me about your assets. The price of betrayal. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were when Maria came to clean, and she handed it to me with that look, the one that said she knew something I didn't. The return address was from the county recorder's office. My hands didn't shake when I opened it. They should have, but they didn't. Maybe some part of me already knew. Notice of property transfer. The words blurred together at first. Legal jargon. Parcel numbers. Then I saw it. Sale price? $5. $5. 23 years of marriage. 17 years building this ranch from dirt and dreams. The sprawling oak trees we planted when Sophie was born. The stables where our daughter learned to ride. The guest house where we hosted anniversary parties and Christmas mornings, and every milestone that mattered. $5. I read the buyer's name 3 times before it sunk in. Sienna M. Crawford. Sienna, the 28-year-old business consultant Michael had hired 6 months ago. The one who always wore those fitted blazers and laughed too loud at his jokes during company dinners. The one I'd felt in my gut was wrong, even as he called me paranoid, jealous, menopausal. I sat in our kitchen, my kitchen, with its imported Italian marble counters and the view of the pastures stretching toward the hills. And I felt something crack open inside me. Not my heart. That would come later. This was different. This was the sound of illusions shattering. The fantasy that the man I'd loved since I was 24, the man I'd built an empire with, had any decency left in him at all. He thought I wouldn't find out. Or maybe he thought I'd find out too late. He was wrong on both counts. I didn't confront him that day. I've learned that silence is a weapon, and I'd need every weapon I had. Instead, I watched him. That evening, Michael came home at 7:30, same as always, kissed my cheek the same dry pack he'd given me for years, asked about my day in that distracted tone that said he didn't actually care about the answer. Fine, I said. Yours? Busy. The Henderson deal is heating up. He loosened his tie, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, and settled into his leather chair by the fireplace. Our fireplace. In our great room. On our ranch. Except it wasn't ours anymore, was it? I studied him like I was seeing him for the first time. The silver at his temples that I used to find distinguished now just looked old. The confidence in his posture now seemed like arrogance. How had I missed it? Or had I simply chosen not to see? Michael, I said carefully, have you signed anything unusual lately? Any paperwork? His hand paused halfway to his mouth. Just for a second, but I saw it. What kind of question is that? Just wondering. I got something from the county today. Looked important. He took a long drink. Probably tax assessments. I'll handle it. I'm sure you will. That night, he slept like a baby. I didn't sleep at all. The thing about being married to a real estate developer is that you learn things. You sit through enough closings, enough contract negotiations, enough late-night phone calls about zoning laws and title insurance. Michael thought I'd tuned it all out, that I was just playing the dutiful wife, smiling and nodding while the men talked business. Because on paper, she did. I stood up, dusted the soil from my gloves, and walked over to intercept her. Can I help you? She stopped, seeming surprised to see me. Oh, hi. I'm Sienna. I'm the new owner. I was just going to look around, get a feel for the place. The audacity of it took my breath away. She knew who I was. She had to. And she was standing there, on my property, acting like this was normal. I was the intruder. The new owner, I repeated slowly. She smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. Michael didn't tell you? We closed last week. Michael tells me a lot of things. Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty? Guilt? It was gone too quickly to tell. Look, she said, shifting her Birkin bag to her other arm. I know this is probably weird, but it's just business, right? Michael said you two had an understanding. An understanding? About the separation, the property division. I smiled then. I couldn't help it. The sheer absurdity of it all, this girl, young enough to be my daughter, telling me about my own marriage. Did he tell you we're separated? Well, yeah? Interesting. Because we're not. We're very much married, living together. In fact, he kissed me goodbye this morning before he left for work. The color drained from her face. I don't understand. Neither do I said pleasantly. But here's what I do understand. You can't move into this house. You can't set foot on this property. Because despite whatever paperwork Michael gave you, this sale is invalid. That's not... He said everything was legal. I'm sure he did. Men say a lot of things. She stared at me, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was just a girl who'd fallen for the wrong man's lies. But the other part of me, the part that had been humiliated, betrayed, sold for $5, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. You should call your lawyer. Actually, you should call Michael. Ask him why he didn't mention that California is a community property state. Ask him why he thought he could sell property without his wife's consent. He said, I don't care what he said. I'm telling you what is. And what is, Sienna, is that you just bought a lawsuit, not a ranch. I turned and walked back to my roses, leaving her standing there in the driveway, her perfect confidence crumbling. Michael came home early that day, slammed through the door at 3 p.m, his face red, his tie askew. What the hell did you say to Sienna? I was in the living room, reading. I set down my book carefully, marked my page. Hello to you too, darling. Don't do that cute thing. What did you tell her? The truth? That she can't have our house? It's not our house anymore. I sold it. No, I said calmly. You tried to sell it. There's a difference. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the law, Michael. Community property, spousal consent, all those boring details you assumed I wouldn't understand. You're insane. The sale is final. It's done. Is it? I stood up, walked to my desk, pulled out a folder. Because according to my attorney and the emergency injunction she filed yesterday, any transfer of jointly held property without full disclosure and consent of both parties is void, especially when that property was purchased during marriage with community funds. I handed him the papers, watched his eyes scan the legal text, watched understanding dawn, then rage. You conniving... Careful, I interrupted. Your lawyer will use anything you say right now against you. Emotional instability, volatility, these things matter in court. There's not going to be a court. I'll fix this. How? By selling it again? To another mistress? For what, $3 this time? His hand tightened on the papers, crumpling them. How long have you known? About Sienna? Months. About this little scheme? Long enough. And you just, what, waited? Played along? I protected myself. There's a difference. He threw the papers at me. They scattered across the hardwood floor like wounded birds. You don't get to do this. I built this place. I made the money. I bought this land. With my inheritance, I said quietly. Remember? When your company was failing, when you needed capital, who gave you $150,000? Who believed in you when the banks wouldn't? That was 20 years ago. It was seed money for all of this. I gestured around the room. You think I don't remember? You think I don't have records? Tax returns showing my contribution. Documents proving this was always community property. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. When did you become such a bitch? The word hung in the air between us. I'd been called worse. But somehow, coming from him, from the man I'd loved, it hurt more than I expected. I became a bitch the moment you decided I was worth $5. The legal battle that followed was exactly as ugly as Rebecca had promised. Michael hired the most expensive divorce attorney in the county, Marcus Wellington, known for his scorched earth tactics and his success rate with wealthy men looking to hide assets from their wives. But Wellington didn't know about the paper trail, about the documents filed months before Michael ever tried his little stunt, about my own attorney's meticulous preparation. The emergency hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Michael moved out. Not far, just to a condo downtown that I suspected Sienna was paying for. He took his clothes, his golf clubs, his precious Scotch collection. He didn't take anything that mattered. He couldn't. The injunction prevented him from removing any community property from the premises. Our daughter Sophie called me the night she found out. She was crying, furious. How could he do this to you? To us? People do terrible things when they're selfish, and your father has always been selfish. I just never wanted to see it. What's going to happen? Honestly, I don't know. But whatever happens, we're going to be okay. How can you be so calm? I thought about that. Was I calm? Or was I just numb? Or maybe I'd moved past both into some new territory where betrayal couldn't touch me anymore, because I'd already accepted the worst of it. Because I prepared, I said finally, and because I know my worth. It's more than $5. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning, in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and desperation. Michael sat on one side with Wellington, who looked like he'd stepped out of a lawyer commercial. Silver hair, expensive suit, the works. Sienna wasn't there. Smart girl. Or maybe she'd finally realized what she'd gotten herself into. I sat with Rebecca, who'd pulled her hair back in a severe bun and wore her most intimidating black suit. Ready? She whispered. Ready. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Patricia Kwan, known for her no-nonsense approach to family law. She looked at the case file, then at both parties, and sighed. Gentlemen, counselors, this should be straightforward. Mr. Pierce, your attorney claims you had the right to sell the property in question, the ranch located at 457 Canyon Ridge Road, because it was held in your name. Wellington stood. That's correct, Your Honor. The deed shows... I can read the deed, Mr. Wellington. What I'm curious about is how your client believed he could sell community property without his spouse's knowledge or consent. The property was purchased before California updated its community property statutes. In 2003, the property was purchased in 2006. Try again. I watched Michael's jaw tighten. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a woman. Rebecca stood. Your Honor, if I may, we have documentation showing that Mrs. Pierce contributed significant separate property, her inheritance, toward the purchase of this property. Furthermore, we have evidence that Mrs. Pierce filed 2 months before this attempted sale a claim of separate property interest and a notice preventing exactly this kind of transfer. She handed a stack of documents to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. Judge Kwan read through them, her expression unchanging. The silence in the courtroom was oppressive. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Pierce, did you know about your wife's filing? Michael's attorney answered for him. Your Honor, my client was unaware. I'm asking Mr. Pierce. Michael stood slowly. No, Your Honor, I didn't know. Did you know that selling community property without spousal consent is illegal? My understanding was that... Yes or no, Mr. Pierce? I thought... Did you know it was illegal? The silence stretched. Yes, he finally said. Judge Kwan nodded. And you proceeded anyway. You sold your marital home, where your wife still resides, to a third party for $5. Can you explain the reasoning behind that price point? Wellington jumped in. Your Honor, the sale price is irrelevant. The sale price is extremely relevant, Mr. Wellington. It suggests either gross incompetence or deliberate fraud. I'm curious which one your client would like to claim. Michael didn't answer. Let me make this simple, Judge Kwan said. The sale is void, invalid. Mrs. Pierce's claim of separate property interest takes precedence, and even if it didn't, Mr. Pierce cannot unilaterally sell community property. The title will be returned to joint ownership, and Miss Crawford, who I notice is not present today, will be notified that she has no legal claim to the property. Wellington tried to object, but Judge Kwan held up her hand. I'm not finished. Mr. Pierce, you will be responsible for any costs Miss Crawford incurred in this fraudulent transaction. That includes her legal fees, her inspection costs, and any other expenses. Furthermore, I'm ordering that all community property be frozen pending a full accounting and potential divorce proceedings. Neither party may sell, transfer, or encumber any jointly held assets without court approval. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca hugged me. You did it. The ranch is yours, ours, I corrected. The court said joint ownership. For now. But in the divorce, with what he tried to pull, you'll get the ranch. Trust me. Michael walked past us without a word. Wellington close behind him, already on the phone with someone. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. What now? I asked. Now we file for divorce. We do a full forensic accounting of all assets. We make sure he can't hide anything else. And we get you everything you're entitled to. I don't want everything. I just want what's mine. Diane. Rebecca turned to face me fully. What's yours is everything. You built that company with him. You raised his child. You put your career on hold so he could build his. You get to decide what you want, and you get to take it. I looked up at the courthouse, thinking about Judge Kwan's questions, about the look on Michael's face when he had to admit he knew what he was doing was illegal, about Sienna, wherever she was, probably realizing she'd been used just like I had. I want the ranch, I said. I want it free and clear, and I want him gone. The divorce took 6 months. Michael fought every step of the way, but his credibility was shot. The judge knew he'd tried to commit fraud. The forensic accountant found 3 other properties he'd tried to hide. Sienna disappeared. Apparently, when the money stopped flowing, so did her devotion. In the end, I got the ranch. All of it. The house, the land, the stables, the guest house. I got half of his company, the half I'd always been entitled to. I got spousal support and a generous settlement from the other assets. Michael got a studio apartment and a reputation as a man who'd tried to sell his wife's home out from under her for $5. Sophie came home for the final hearing. She sat beside me as the judge declared our marriage dissolved, as 23 years of partnership officially ended. How do you feel? She asked. Afterwards, as we walked to my car. Free, I said. And I meant it. I'm writing this now from the porch of the ranch house, my ranch house. The sun is setting over the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The horses are grazing in the pasture. Maria just brought me iced tea. This morning, a young woman came to tour the guest house. I'm thinking about renting it out, to women, specifically. Women who need a place to start over. Women who need space to figure out who they are outside of someone else's expectations. I told her my story, about the betrayal, about the $5, about how I protected myself before I even knew I needed protection. She cried. Then she asked how she could do the same thing. I gave her Rebecca's number. People think revenge is about hurting the person who hurt you, but it's not. Real revenge is building a life so good, so full, so completely yours that their absence doesn't even register as a loss. Michael tried to take everything from me. He thought I was weak, dependent, that without him, I'd be nothing. He was wrong. I'm not nothing. I'm not even something. I'm everything I always was. I just forgot for a while. I forgot that I was the one with the business degree. I was the one who gave him the capital to start his company. I was the one who made this place a home. He took none of that from me because he never gave it to me in the first place. It was always mine. The thing about betrayal is that it reveals truth, not just about the person who betrayed you, but about yourself, about what you're capable of, about what you're willing to accept, and what you're willing to fight for. I fought, and I won. Not because I'm special or particularly strong or unusually smart, but because I refused to accept that my worth could be measured in dollars, 5 or 5 million, or anything in between. I know women who've lost everything in situations like mine, who trusted completely and were destroyed completely. I don't judge them. Love makes us vulnerable. That's not a weakness. It's the price of being human. But vulnerability doesn't have to mean powerlessness. You can love someone and still protect yourself. You can hope for the best and still prepare for the worst. You can be soft and still be steel underneath. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it. And now I'm teaching it to others. The young woman who toured the guest house today is moving in next week. She's leaving a husband who emptied their bank accounts and disappeared. She has 2 kids and no job, and nowhere to go. She'll stay here as long as she needs, rent-free for the first 6 months while she gets on her feet. Because I can afford it. Because the ranch that Michael tried to sell for $5 is worth millions. Because everything he tried to take, I kept. But more than that, because no one should have to learn this lesson the way I did. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful that I listened to that small voice inside me that said something was wrong. Grateful for Rebecca, who helped me protect myself before I knew I needed protection. Grateful for the courage to take action even when I was terrified. And yes, grateful even for Michael's betrayal, because it freed me from a marriage that was already dead, from a man who saw me as property, not a partner, from a life that looked perfect but felt empty. The ranch is beautiful at sunset. The light turns everything golden. The grass, the trees, the mountains in the distance. I built this. Not alone, but I built it. And no one can take it from me ever again. I've learned that dignity isn't about never being hurt. It's about refusing to let that hurt define you. It's about standing up, dusting yourself off, and taking back what's yours. Michael thought he could erase me from this place. Thought he could rewrite our history, pretend I was never here, never mattered. But I'm still here, and I always will be. The price of betrayal, it turns out, is higher than either of us expected. For him, it cost everything. His marriage, his reputation, his home. For me, it cost my illusions. I'd make that trade again in a heartbeat. Because the truth, however painful, is always worth more than a beautiful lie. And my truth is this: I am not what was done to me. I am what I chose to become afterward. I chose strength. I chose self-respect. I chose to fight for what was mine. And I won. Not because winning was the goal, but because losing was never an option. The sun has set now. The stars are coming out. Inside the house, I hear Maria finishing up in the kitchen. Tomorrow, I'll meet with my financial advisor about expanding the property. I'm thinking about building a small community of guest houses, a place where women in transition can find safety and support, a place where no one will ever be worth $5, a place where everyone knows their own worth. This ranch isn't just my home anymore. It's my legacy, my proof that you can survive betrayal and come out stronger. That you can lose everything that mattered and discover what truly matters. I didn't just keep my ranch. I kept myself, and that, in the end, is worth everything.